Y'all campaign is about fear. It's about inciting fear in people. You all attack people with fear. That's what this pandemic is. It's a fear.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's time to get caught up on Fauci's latest BS, and my friend and co-founder of Base Politics, Hannah Cox, is here with me to react. Hannah, are you excited?
I'm super excited. I can't stand Dr. Anthony Fauci, so I'm excited to see people beat up on him.
Metaphorically, of course. So this is from a PBS documentary that actually airs this week called Dr. Fauci. And they've got this footage in it that the footage is from 2021. And Dr. Fauci went around a black neighborhood in DC with DC Mayor Muriel Bowser and basically tried to convince residents to get vaccinated. And some of the responses were really funny and interesting. But without further ado, let's just go into the start of the video because I think it kind of sets the stage for what's to come.
So this is Anacostia, historic African-American neighborhood. In New York, they have neighborhoods. Here they have wards. So this is Ward 8. It's the typical social determinants of health, where they don't get good medical care, they have a high degree of HIV, high degree of COVID-19, the lowest level of vaccination. They're sort of the disenfranchised group that we got to reach out to. So the mayor is now with me, going to congratulate the people who are going to go out into the community to try and get people vaccinated.
So Hannah, it's giving white savior.
I know that they made like the Catholic candles out of Fauci, and he's kind of got some religious elements with the fan worship on the left, but it's clearly gone to his head. He thinks he's Jesus coming in to save the black community, and it really gives major patronizing kind of vibes. One thing I've learned about working in the black community, which I have done pretty extensively, I worked for a black gospel label first, and then I worked in Memphis oftentimes when I was working in Tennessee. So I've spent a lot of time talking to the black community about their views on issues. And they're much more nuanced than people tend to recognize, both Democrats or Republicans, right? Like Democrats kind of tend to think like we've got that group on lock. And yes, like as a whole, they are going to vote for Democrats most of the time. But when you really start talking to them, a lot of them also hate Democrats. They're just not convinced of Republicans either. And I get it. But they're not that satisfied. And they have a lot more nuance in how they think through the policies. Like they don't tend to be as in lockstep on issues with the Democrats as like a white Democrat might think. So I already know many of their opinions on vaccines are quite nuanced, as you would expect, and have been all along. We always knew they were less likely to get vaccinated. There was more pushback in the black community on some of the forced practices around vaccination. And if you know the history of our U.S. government when it comes to testing on the black community, they're not here for it. We've had many times throughout history that our government has tested on the black community without telling them fully what they were doing. And also, when it comes to vaccine development, I have friends that have explained this to me. Oftentimes, when they are doing the testing, they don't extensively test on the black community. And sometimes they can have different reactions to things than we can. So there is a concern, especially when you have a new drug, that it might not have been tested fully enough to be safe for them. And I think that that was a concern many people had. I'm guessing that is nowhere on Fauci's registry, though.
No, and I have to say there's just something aesthetically that bothers me about him in his black car being driven down to the black neighborhood in his suit with his cloth mask on. By the way, you can see in there he's wearing a cloth mask, which doesn't exactly tell you that he's following the science, because everyone knows that N95s are the masks that actually might make a difference, and cloth masks are just virtue signaling. So there's a little bit where it's kind of uncontroversial. He's just talking to some people who've chosen to get vaccinated, and they're fangirling over him. So we'll skip over that. We'll go to this moment where he and Muriel Bowser talk about the red states and how they're the only reason we really have a pandemic anymore. Take a listen.
What are we going to do about those other states?
Oh my God. They're going to keep the outbreak smoldering in the country. It's so crazy. I mean, they're not doing it because they say they don't want to do it. They're Republicans. They don't like to be told what to do. Right. And we got to break that, unpack that.
So is it just me, or is this kind of gaslighting? Because some of the epicenters of the entire pandemic were New York and New Jersey. What the highest state for COVID infections per population ended up being Rhode Island, which is a blue state. Some places like New Hampshire barely had any restrictions and is a red state, and we're just actually very low ranked for COVID problems. It was never, of course, there's some red states that had tons of deaths, like West Virginia, but they've also got a very poor and elderly population. So it never had a neat red-blue correlation. It was always very messy. So it bothers me to hear them blame this on just the red states, because like, we know the vaccine didn't even stop the disease from spreading. It still spread to everybody. Everybody I know that had the vaccine still got COVID, and thankfully they're fine. You know, you can make I think you can make a strong case that the vaccines protect at-risk people from serious illness and death. And if I was an at-risk person, I recommend getting it for that purpose. But we know that it didn't. It's not like they were just, the only reason it kept spreading was because people in red states wouldn't get the vaccine. I mean, we just know that that's not how it played out. And as a supposed expert, shouldn't he have known that? And shouldn't he not have been so openly partisan on camera? Like,
Yeah. It's totally bogus. It shows his God complex yet again. This is an airborne disease. It didn't recognize red state and blue state boundaries. It had little to do with who died, who got sick. This was something that you cannot control in that way. And if people want to know why it became so hyper-partisan, you have to look no further than Fauci and people in the federal government who made it a partisan issue. There was no need for anything about this pandemic to be so politicized, except for the fact that they used it as a weapon. They used it as an opportunity to come in and try to set policies that had nothing to do with public health. They used it to try to shut down property rights. They used it to try to say that people don't have to pay their bills. They used it to shut down people's businesses, their schools. They made it political. And what you saw was people who were already suspicious of the government and people who value fundamental rights and liberties taking a strong stand against it. It's kind of an indictment on them that most of those people happen to be on the right, but I also disagree it was just Republicans. You saw a significant shift during the pandemic. I talk to people every day who have changed their politics, who have moved states because of pandemic policies, who have become awoken to the main problems with big government and centralized power because of this. So it was by no means just Republicans who were pushing back on his absolute tyrannical
and I love how
lunacy.
he's shocked. The Republicans don't like being told what to do. Sir, Americans don't like being told what to do. And he's like, if everyone just bowed down to my directives, we'd be out of this mess in no time. Well, we tried that for quite a while, actually. Most of the country did. And things did not magically get better. The whole thing, it's really arrogant. It's really partisan from a supposed nonpartisan expert. But let's get into the part of the video where he actually talks to some people who haven't been vaccinated or are skeptical of the vaccine. Take a listen to this part.
How you guys doing with vaccine?
I haven't gotten it yet. I'm waiting for them to be able to.
Oh, you should get it first. Okay, that way you won't give it to them.
Oh, I thought I would give it to them if I get it.
No, not at all. In fact, we got to get you vaccinated so that if you were to get infected, you could pass it on to them. So you're actually protecting your family by getting it vaccinated.
Well, I heard that it doesn't cure it and it doesn't stop you from getting it.
No.
So
on the very, very, very rare chance that you do get it, even if you're vaccinated, you don't even feel sick. It's like you don't even know you got infected. It's very, very good at protecting you.
So this one really bothered me because you have these moms with their kids, and they're saying, well, and what both Muriel Bowser and Dr. Fauci are telling them, if you get the vaccine, then you won't give COVID to your kids. You'll be protecting your kids. They won't get COVID. You won't be able to spread COVID. That's not true. We know that's not true. At the time, they didn't really have all the facts to believe it was true. They were kind of speculating, and they were giving these people false security that's not. First off, those kids, unless they have some rare medical condition or something, if they're just young, healthy kids, are at basically no risk from COVID. Statistically, tiny, tiny, tiny risk. So it was kind of scaremongering to begin with, but then to give them that false security that if you get this, you won't pass it on to your kids, that's simply not true. We know that's not true. And so they're cajoling people into getting this with misleading information. That seems messed up to me.
Per usual, the government is the main perpetrator of actual misinformation. They were peddling this kind of bogus information all along. The women are actually not wrong in this video with what they've heard, right? You can still get it. You can still transmit it. And then Fauci even says, if you get it, you won't have a bad case. BS. I got the vaccine and I got COVID, and I'm telling you, I still had a hell of a case. It was awful. So everything he's saying here is completely wrong. And they're trying to push people to get it despite valid concerns that they have. And despite the fact that they really couldn't be as confident as they tried to claim with what the vaccine could do and what its possibilities were. And that is
if they had just been more humble and stuck to the facts, for example, you do see a huge reduction in death rate for COVID if they've been vaccinated. And the states with deaths and vaccines, it correlates very closely, reduced COVID deaths and vaccines. If they had just said, you still might get sick, you still might spread the disease, but your risk of death goes way, way, way down, and your risk of hospitalization goes way, way, way down. If they had just said that and stuck to that, people would have, I think, at least believed them, because they wouldn't, but they had to oversell everything, and then people get turned off to the entire thing as a result.
Right. Well, the number one thing that you actually need government to do when there's a crisis, that is an actual role, I think a valid role government can play when something really hits the fan, is you need them to be clear communicators of information so that people can make the best decisions for themselves. That's it. You need to give them constant updates, constant feedback, continue to update information as it changes and you get more of it, and allow people to do what they need to with that information. Our government did the opposite of that. Instead, they tried to hide certain factors as they came out. They tried to downplay others. They manipulated. They spun things. They outright lied. As a whole, it led to people feeling like they couldn't trust anything that they said, and rightfully so. And so probably a lot of people who did ultimately die from COVID, who would have gotten vaccinated had they just done that, didn't get the vaccine because they were afraid to and because they didn't really know what they could trust. I still agree. I got the vaccine. I don't really think I needed it ultimately, but I do think if you had serious comorbidities, you were overweight, you already had heart disease, you already had diabetes, which many people in the Black community do have, then it was probably smart to get the vaccine to ensure you wouldn't die. But the way they went about this, it ultimately, you worked against yourself in trying to convince these populations to trust you and put something that's still, let's be quite candid, quite experimental in your body. It is still new. They did take shortcuts to get it passed. I understand why they did that, but there are valid concerns that people had about taking this vaccine, and what they should have been doing is answering those concerns honestly.
Yeah, let's get to the next clip here, where Muriel Bowser, the DC mayor, she again is manipulating a resident with some false claims.
Are not settled with the information that's been given to us right now. So I'm not going to be lining up taking a shot on a vaccination for something that wasn't clear in the first place. And then you all create a shot in miraculous time. It takes years to create vaccination.
Well, it used to take years.
Okay, it used to.
You know how many years were invested in this approach? About 20 years of science to get us to be able to do it.
20 years is not enough. And 9 months is definitely not enough for nobody to be taking no vaccination that you all came up with.
The only reason I'm talking to you right now, as close as we are, is that I've been vaccinated.
Right.
But if it allows thousands of people like you don't get vaccinated, you're going to let this virus continue to percolate in this country. And
So Muriel Bowser, first off, the guy they're talking to, I don't think he has all his facts right about a couple different things. He gets a little kooky in parts of this. But anyway, going back and forth with Muriel Bowser, she says that the only reason she's talking to him and is safe is because she's had the vaccine. Ma'am, you're outside. You're 6 feet away from him and you are outside. That's not how COVID spreads. COVID spreads barely at all outside, and you need extended close to close contact with somebody indoors. And so you're not following the science, you're misleading somebody. And then she says the pandemic's only continuing because of people like you who won't get the vaccine. Again, we know that's not true. We know it doesn't stop transmission. Whether it reduces transmission, maybe, but it still transmits at a high volume, even with it. So again, I don't like this approach of, he clearly has some theories about the vaccine and stuff and doesn't quite know all the facts because some of this technology has been in the works for a long time. But when you're just repeating mantras that are dishonest or not based in reality to him, you're not going to convince him.
Honestly, so far, watching this video is my definition of a good time. I love that they thought they were going into the Black community and they brought a film crew because clearly they thought they were going to be received so well and be greeted as like the white saviors they want to be. But instead, they get all this pushback. I love this guy. I love him going off. He might not have every fact straight, but what he's saying is what the vast majority of Americans felt, which is that we don't trust you. The information is not settled. You're trying to act like it's settled. You're trying to act like you're above book, and we don't trust you. We don't buy it. That's not the case. And he might not be the most educated on everything, but his instincts are exactly right. So go off, King. I loved watching the pushback from him.
So, and then he says some like slightly conspiratorial thing where he's like, something's going on with you guys hawking this vaccine. And Muriel Bowser agrees with him. Take a listen.
You gonna pass?
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Because when you start talking about paying people to get vaccinated, when you start talking about incentivizing things to get people vaccinated, it's something else going on with that. Something else going on.
It
with
is
that.
something going on.
There's
With
something else.
You're
going
right,
on.
but I'm glad millions of people like me and most everybody here didn't get an incentive. You know what their incentive was? Protecting their health and protecting the city.
Right.
But that's
She literally says, yeah, you're right.
I love that she agrees, because how can you disagree? When you start paying people to put something in their body, when you start using the federal government to mandate it, there is something bigger going on. And I don't want to get into like the conspiratorial side of vaccine policy, but I think as a whole, you did have a lot of people who were profiting a good bit off of this vaccine and a good bit off of trying to make people take it. And I mean, he's not wrong to sniff that out.
I actually don't really agree with, like, I think the reason that local governments did like cash incentives and were lotteries and other stuff to promote the vaccine is that was like a public health measure. And if it happens to also help the pharma companies that donate to them, they also like that. But I don't actually think there's some deep, dark conspiracy behind a lot of the vaccine efforts. I think it just caught on in the mainstream and everyone wanted to push it because they thought it was the right thing. And they went overboard. I don't even really think there was some shady conspiracy to you guys mandate it and we'll give you cash behind the scenes. Like, I don't even really think there was, but he suggests something nefarious and she just is like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, what? Is there something I don't know?
I mean, I think that really knowing how government operates, like, you don't have to have a, like, you guys mandate it, we'll give you kickbacks, handshake agreement to understand that pushing this vaccine was going to be very profitable for a lot of people. And I think that's why they were not realistic about it, right? Again, they could have come out and said, this vaccine is not foolproof. There are still going to be issues with it. You can still get sick. Yes, there are some side effects even, but if you have these comorbidities, it's going to be really smart to take it because at least you won't die. And probably those risks outweigh the others for certain populations. That's not how they went about it. They pushed it on young people. They were trying to push it on children at certain points. They did pay people to take it. They used the federal government to force people's jobs to make them take it. And I do think that, yes, there was public health incentives there. Yes, there's just the general nature of people who want power and want to micromanage people's lives. But I also do think the monetary incentives were there, and it'd be hard to deny that. But either way, I just love that she caved, and once she realizes he's pushing back, she's like, so it's a no for you? And he's like, yeah, it's a hard no.
And then he goes off and take a listen to, he doesn't hold back. He goes off here at the end. Take a listen to this part.
Y'all campaign is about fear. It's about inciting fear in people. You all attack people with fear. That's what this pandemic is. It's a fear. It's fear, this pandemic. That's all it is.
So he just goes off and then they just walk away. They give up. They're like, yeah, we can't argue. All right, on to the next one. And then they just include this all in the video. And I'm like, this 7-minute preview of the documentary is like 2/3 Fauci and Bowser getting owned. And like 1/3 people positively responding to them. Do they really like think this was a good idea? This is their edit. This is their cut of it. Imagine how bad the full footage must be.
I can't wait. I'll definitely be watching this whole documentary. But I love that he's like, scram, kids. And they're like, okay. And they run away with their tail tucked between their legs. And you have Fauci like washing his hands after interacting with the dirty public. Oh my gosh. The whole thing is hysterical. And the guy's not wrong. everything about pandemic policies were based on fear mongering and trying to use fear to manipulate people and to have population control. And thank God there were enough people that pushed back against this, because they had much bigger plans in store than what they even got away with had people not. And the fact that this is their edit, I mean, that they think this shows them like all the odds they were up against, all the stupidity they had to fight against and push back against. And they actually think this makes them look sane, and like we're the good people and we're the good guys and we kept fighting the hard fight. And poor Fauci
they
just
got
persevered. But no, you actually got owned to every rational person watching this.
It's wild, man. And I can't wait for the full documentary. Stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned. All right. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hannah and I do content on my channel all the time, and we host a podcast together that you should check out in the pinned comment below if you enjoyed this video. And with that, we'll see you all next time.